Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world, and welcome to today's session brought to you by Loyola University Chicago School of Law. Now, before we hand you over and to go through a bit more detail about what they've got to offer and the fabulous opportunities that may arise while you're studying in Chicago, a reminder that this is a live session. If you're watching on social media via Facebook or LinkedIn, this is being streamed. Please use the messenger facility at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on Zoom, please use the Q&A or the chat facility where we'll put our input in there now to give you the opportunity to reply back to that. But without waiting too much longer, I'd like to hand you over to Inta. Inta is from the law school directly. She'll be taking you through the next 20 to 30 minutes, and I'll be back for the Q&A at the end. Over to you, Inta.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gareth. I am Inza Blanke. I'm the director of the LLM programs for international lawyers at Loyola Chicago. We do have two campuses. One is in Chicago, that's the major campus. We also have a campus in Rome, and I'll get to that a little later. These programs are on campus in Chicago. So I just realized that I arrived in Chicago 30 years ago. After I finished the German legal education and all those exams that go with it. I finished the licensing exams in Berlin, and then I packed my two suitcases and simply moved here. So 30 years later, I am a happy higher education administration person. I launched this program in 2012. Before that, I had realized after working in a big law firm not as a licensed attorney, obviously, that it does make sense to get the legal education. Law school education and degrees do not transfer well into other countries. So you do need to boost your education, which is what we're talking about today. I knew that I would take the bar exam, and for Illinois, that meant I had to take the JD program. We have a solution for you if you want to stay in Illinois, and Josh will share something about that. It is possible to take a bar exam with the LLM degree in select states in the United States. The two biggest states that offer that option are California and New York. When I launched this program, I designed it so that the issues and concerns and transition issues I had when I joined the law school, to a different law school, to take the JD program, that those would not happen to my students. So I focus on flexibility. Our program is very flexible. Inclusion into the JD population. You will take the classes with the JD students, and we make sure that you have access to all the services that the JD students receive as well. We focus on academic excellence, which means you're not just a number. We really take care of your education and want you to do well and to get the most out of your time at Loyola Chicago. And finally, we try to make it as affordable as possible, because we all know that the United States education has a price tag that is much more than in other countries. So that's a brief overview of my background. I have two panelists with me. Thank you for joining. Achieng and Josh, I would like you to say a couple of words about your who you are, where you're from. Achieng.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Achieng Orero. I am currently a student at Loyola University. I am doing my LLM. I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. I have a law degree, and I am admitted to practice in the bar in Kenya. And yeah, I'm excited to share my experience with you all and looking forward to the rest of the session.
So yeah, my name's Josh. I'm originally from Australia and had a law degree and practiced a little bit in Australia, and then During the pandemic, like the end of 2020, start of 2021, I came to Loyola and I started an LLM program for the international lawyers. I completed that at the end of 2021, start of 22, and then I transferred into the JD program. So I'm in my final semester and will be taking the February bar exam. So no, I really enjoyed my experience and looking forward to the session.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining. I know that applicants or prospective applicants always like to hear from current students or graduates because it's a different perspective than mine. All right. So I usually go recruiting in person. My next trip is in November. I will visit various cities in Europe. I understand that you're chiming in from all over the world, which is fantastic. I have been to many countries. This is the first time I'm trying this out. Armchair recruiting is convenient, and I'm hoping to reach you. I'll share the details of my trip later. If you're in those cities, please come by and visit. So thank you, Gareth, for giving me this opportunity, and we're going to go into detail right now. So Loyola Chicago the law school was started in 1908, and believe it or not, that is old for the United States. So we have an acclaimed and very engaged faculty. I have worked at 2 other law schools before, and I must say, and I hear that from all the students, this is an incredibly nice law school, which means we do take care of our students. We have 67 full-time faculty members, and in addition to that, over 200 other faculty members, lecturers, or adjunct faculty. Adjunct faculty are practitioners who teach what they practice. That's the upper level classes. Most of them are skills classes, and that is something that's very interesting to most international students. You do not just learn the doctrines, you also learn how to apply the doctrines in real settings. So many of my students enjoy the ability to enroll in those classes. We have approximately 900 students in the JD programs. The JD programs are for 3 years, so that's about 300, give or take, per year. And we also have a strong online program, graduate program, LLM and MJ. So that's an additional 300 students. For the on-campus LLM students, my program has the most presence in terms of students. We have also 18 centers of excellence at the law school, and those are centers that specialize in specific fields, and it could be clinics or international law and practice or international arbitration, things like that, and I'll get into detail a little bit later about that. Loyola, as you may have surmised, is a Jesuit university. Jesuits are known for their focus on teaching excellence and an emphasis on public service, which is exactly what this school does. We do have a lot of opportunities for our students, including you, to engage in public interest work, and it's woven into many classes as well. It's also a very warm and welcoming community, and our students are really integrated into the fabric of Loyola. The student body is very diverse and dynamic. The average age of the JD students, I believe, is around 25 years old. In my program, we have a broader range because we have many students who already have practiced for a while, but we also have students who come to us right after they finish their law school. We also have people who have immigrated to Chicago a while ago and now want to continue in their legal career. So it is an excellent mix, as you can see on that photo. That's one of our parties. There we go. So when I mentioned flexibility, we do not have specific LLM degrees, say in LLM in IP or an LLM in corporate law. we have 2 tracks. And the reason for that is that I experienced many students who don't really know yet what they actually want, because many students do not have the opportunity to choose a focus or to choose their courses in their own schools. So that may take a while. And the idea of the LLM program is for you to discover new fields that you didn't even know about. So we have 2 tracks. One is in US law for international lawyers. And that is for those students who are planning to stay in the US, to get licensed and practice as a fully licensed lawyer. There are also students who plan to return to their home country and to advise US clients in international law firms or corporations about business connections in the US. And as I mentioned before, most foreign students, law students, take the bar exam in New York, and there are certain requirements that you need to fulfill, and you can do that with this track. We have a very high bar exam passage rate, around 75%, give or take, obviously. The reason for that is, I think, that we have a very strong legal writing program for the LLM students. We're one of the few schools that has a mandatory 2-semester legal writing program. And that is very helpful, not just for the bar exam, but also it gives you legal writing samples when you apply for jobs, and it helps you to do well in your finals. And this is 4 of my students after their swearing in ceremony at the court in New York. Carlos from Spain, Francesco from Switzerland, Anael from France, and Jonas from Lithuania. Jonas and Carlos are still in Chicago. They both work in a very big international company. And about 10 to 12 students have found jobs through that company. Francesco and Anael both have worked for 2-3 years in Chicago, and then they went back to their home countries. Anael is in an international law firm, and Francesco is working in a bank. The second track 2, is international law, and you have the opportunity to choose a certificate focus. So you can do that in the US law track as well, with certain limitations. So this is for students who want to specialize, obviously, in public or private international law. Most of my students focus on corporate transactional business law. That field just lends itself to international students. But we also have very strong certificate focuses in arbitration, mediation, negotiation, ADR, alternative dispute resolution, in antitrust or competition law. And I mentioned the public interest focus of Loyola that's reflected in the child and family law program that we have. It's highly ranked in the United States, and the health law program that we offer. Also, human rights. Many of my students now do immigration law, IP, tax law, trade law. In short, anything that we can put together based on the courses that we offer, you may choose that as your certificate focus. So that is the idea of flexibility, because you all come from different walks of life. Now a little bit about the Loyola LLM experience. I mentioned it's a small program. We have between 20 and 25 students. When you choose your program, and there are many LLM programs in the United States and even in Chicago, there's certain criteria you should look at. One of them is the size of the program. The benefits to both big programs and to small programs. What I like personally about the small size is that I know all my students and they know me. I don't just push papers or focus on one aspect. I do curriculum advising. I do the application process. I host events. I teach, and it's all coming very nicely together. So we have time to sit down with you to go through the course catalog and help you pick the best courses that meet your professional goals. The program is very diverse, even though there are not so many students. We typically have no more than 1 or 2 students per country. And in this short time, 12 years, that the program existed, we had students from over 55 countries, which of course is a great international network. You may choose to study part-time. It's possible under certain conditions with your student visa. Many of my students choose to complete the degree in 3 semesters. You may start in January or in August, because the January begin the spring semester and August is fall semester. And again, you can design your curriculum based on your choice of courses from our course catalog. We offer a pre-semester orientation program that prepares you for the transition into the US academic and legal world, which is, believe me, different from what most of you are used to, particularly if you come from a civil law country. Only 2 of your courses are exclusively reserved for the international LLM students. That's the Introduction to US Law, obviously, and legal writing, because all of you do have legal experience, but you have different style of writing. So it's a different focus. But in essence, the legal writing program we have for you is based on the JD legal writing program. In all other classes, you join the JD students. Another aspect of another benefit of a small program is that we do not use an auction system to give you access to classes. In other schools, many other schools, you will receive an email with your auction number in spring, and then you can auction into classes, and that means that you do not always get the course that you actually want. You don't always get into our courses as well, but I do my best behind the screen to help get you into the classes that you want to get into. That's lots of emails with the registrar and the faculty, and it typically works. We have an assistant dean and a director for studying techniques and bar exam success, which means you can join those workshops as well. They help you prepare for the exams, for the bar exams, for the finals. And again, we have a strong focus in our LLM program on legal writing. You can also use the LLM to prepare for an SJD program, which means you can turn this into a research LLM. Generally, there is no mandatory thesis requirement. Most of my students want to go into practice. They prefer the skills courses. But if you choose to do that, then that option is there. And we have the option to transfer to the JD program, and that's what Josh is completing right now. So Josh, if you would like to share a couple of words about that experience.
Yeah, sure. It's been it was a pretty smooth transition. Once I finished my LLM, I went straight into the JD program that next semester. So as you were saying, the JD program is 3 years. So with the LLM, it took a year off my JD. Essentially, so I transferred all my LLM credits straight onto the JD program. And yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I've been able to, yes, kind of do some specialty courses in immigration and a few of my other kind of passion areas. I think some of the things that you mentioned about the community and just, I guess, like the Midwest culture and being in Chicago definitely is true. And I've been really lucky to meet a bunch of LLM students, a bunch of JD students that are local or from different parts of America as well. So I've really enjoyed it.
Excellent, thank you. And Josh will graduate with the LLM and a JD in a total of 3 years. So we do offer this opportunity to the graduates from our LLM program to simply, you don't need to take the law school admission test. That's a nice feature. we will simply look at your grades from law school, which is a much better indication of your legal capacity. So, a word about career counseling. Like all law schools in the United States, we have a career services office, and that's staffed with 5 people who focus on not giving you a job. Obviously, that's sometimes a misunderstanding. They help you apply and get ready. And that may sound easy, but that's a lot of work. I sometimes say this is like a 1 credit hour class if you're looking for a job, to prepare for interviews, to really Americanize your resume, to fine-tune it to that position, to write the perfect cover letter, to network, how to network. There are networking workshops. You can do mock interviews where you're being filmed and get feedback. Other job search strategies. How do you reach out? How do you create the perfect LinkedIn profile? We host career fairs, and throughout the semester, there are workshops and also luncheons with alumni from our law school, which is a great idea to hear from practitioners what their job entails, what criteria they're looking for in applicants, and so on and so on. Particularly for students from abroad, this is a very interesting insight into the practical world in the law firms in the United States. So, yes, our faculty and staff available around the clock, really. So I get emails all day long. I have a graduate student from the LLM program who also is in the JD program, who works for me and who is available on WhatsApp. I'm not, I do email, but we do really do our best to make sure you succeed. I also enlist the faculty to share with me if they have concerns about a student who hasn't turned on in the assignment, which I just got an email from a professor, or who missed too many classes. Attendance is mandatory, if that's a novelty for many students. But mostly, actually, when I pass the faculty in the hallway, they say, I have this great student from wherever, and bring in more students, and I want a student in my class, because they like to use and integrate the foreign students to get the different perspectives. And that is very nice, because we can do that because we don't have hundreds of students. So that's a very other nice benefit of a small program. You can study part-time, which means you need only 8 credit hours minimum to maintain your visa. You need a total of 24 credit hours to graduate. That's where the 3 semesters come in. We have a very unique weekend JD program. That's our part-time program for the JD students. We launched that about 8 years ago, maybe 10. It's taught on the weekends. So on the weekends, our school is packed every other weekend. And a third of the program is taught online. So that's a combination of asynchronous online teaching and in-person on-campus teaching. We reach students from all over the United States, because there are lots of people who have a job or family or both, and who cannot afford to go to law school at night. They use this structure to fly in from Houston or New York and get the JD in. They do that in 4 years. I offer this to my students as well. They may enroll in those classes. And that's a great opportunity if you have a job, for example, in Chicago. You can't do that on your student visa. But as I said, I have students who work already in law firms. And for them, that is a great opportunity. Finally, we have more than 50 student organizations, 8 academic journals, 6 clinical programs, 4 dispute resolution competition teams, in addition to trial and appellate moot court competition options. Now, not all of those make sense for you, because if you start in the fall, you may want to get your ground. under your feet first and get Americanized and get an idea of how law school works. But if you start in the spring semester, you could enroll in the fall semester, for example. I just had a student who completed in May. She was on the International Law Journal. We had students who compete in the Wismut competition. We send teams to Vienna and Hong Kong. That's an international arbitration competition, and so on and so on. So all these things are open to you as well. So this is just to say that law school is not just about the classes. It is about the culture, it's about communication, it's about networking, it's about public interest work. We have one director for public interest opportunities. And if you join the events that she organizes, then you will see what's going on outside of law school. That's a very interesting insight in life in America, in Chicago at least. And there is really a lot that you can do to round off your education. We have lots of symposia, conferences. The Constitutional Colloquium was held in November, which brings international constitutional scholars from all over the world. We have an antitrust seminar in May, and it's really, there is a lot for you to do. All right, so here's some testimonials of students who have graduated a while ago. There is Saba Gishan from Jordan. She did the LLM in international law, and she chose an ADR certificate. She worked for the World Bank in New York, and now she is with the International Monetary Fund. Juan from Chile, an IP lawyer, went into politics when he went back to Chile, and now he has his own law firm. And finally, Harrison from Kenya, who did the LLM in international law, also the ADR certificate, went back to Nairobi to teach at Strathmore Law School, and then came back to do the SJD. That's the dissertation degree for lawyers. That is the highest degree you can get in the United States for lawyers. It's like a PhD. And he graduated in May, and is now on the job market. So that's just a brief overview of those students. Achieng, I would like you to tell us a little bit, because I mean, you have just been 6 weeks in the law school. Do you have any favorite classes? What is most striking to you in your experience so far?
Yeah, it's been an exciting 6 weeks. I just started the first semester of my LLM, and so far it's been very interesting. My background in Kenya is we didn't have the option to pick the classes you want to do, so you just have a set curriculum that you must follow. And so it was very exciting for me to walk through the course catalog and see which specific courses I wanted to do that are in line with my career goals. And I'm more gravitating towards international law and anything that has any aspects of human rights in it. So far, I'm doing a course on international environmental law. I'm doing a course on international humanitarian law, and then a very interesting course on the quest for racial justice here in the US in the 1960s. And so coming into those classes with kind of an outsider perspective has been very interesting for me, just to learn how the US law interacts with international law. The class on quest for racial justice for me has been very eye-opening, just seeing the struggle to get to equality despite very good provisions in the US Constitution. So in terms of classes, I think I'm very excited to participate, to study. There's a lot of reading that goes with the LLM classes or law school in general, which also is very different than my background. We had more of an instruction focused, where the professors come and just spew information out. But here you have to do a lot of preparation work for yourself, study before your classes so that you participate well and kind of get the most out of your classes. So that has been my experience so far. the introduction to US law and legal writing are mandatory classes for the LLM. So that gives me a good kind of opportunity to meet with my fellow classmates who are also from all over the world and are going through the same thing as me. So we get to empathize with one another and share our experiences so far. And yeah, so far it's been very interesting and exciting for me.
So I'm specializing in a few things. Because I did the LLM first and I swapped into the JD, a lot of my second 2 years has been kind of ticking off the required courses for the JD program. So I've had to do courses such as constitutional law, such as criminal law, and the basics they require for the JD program. Some of the other programs that I've really enjoyed, I mentioned earlier, immigration law has become a focus of mine. I taken 3 or 4 different immigration courses, whether it's kind of like I did like immigration 101 type of thing, and then I've specialized more in refugee and asylum law. I was lucky enough to go to the Arizona and Mexico border last spring and do a trip there.
I didn't even know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was like very intense trip, but really eye-opening, and got to see what happens down there at the border and going to immigration courts and work with asylum seekers down there. So that was one of the best experiences that I've had so far, for sure. Excellent.
And that shows you how even though you're both in the LLM program, you can go completely different routes, and how real life issues are woven into the teaching, such as the trip to the southern borders, social issues, etc. So that's a really exciting aspect of our education. All right, so the application. I hear a lot of complaints about the application to US law schools. It's the same for all law schools, by the way. So take this, and you should apply to several schools. Obviously, of course, I mean, if you want to come to Loyola, just apply here. But so we use a free application form. And if you email me your email address, you will be getting the information. Or you can copy this email address. We don't use a deadline. We use rolling admissions. As soon as your application file is complete, we will send it to the admissions committee, and then you will have a decision within a week or 2. And that decision will also include the scholarship, the potential scholarship that you may receive. We consider all applicants automatically for scholarship opportunities. And that would be in form of a tuition reduction. We can unfortunately not afford a full ride, but we try our best to make it affordable. So in terms of documents that we need, it's not many, as you can see, it's 5 bullet points. The resume, obviously, it doesn't have to be American style. I get lots of resumes, that's fine. But I want you to leave our school with an American style resume. So list your major education, work experience, your degrees, of course, any honors you received, bar memberships, anything you do in the legal community or legal field. You can also list your hobbies, for example. But this is just an overview for the reviewer to see. That's what I look at first, by the way. Then we do need a personal statement that's a narrative. And this is your opportunity to highlight specific aspects of your background, of your motivation that you want the committee to know. Cultural background, difficulties that you had to overcome, your most favorite experiences in law school or practical experience, etc., etc. And also state the reasons why you would apply, why you want to come to Loyola. You now have a good idea about what Loyola is like, so that's something that you should put into that personal statement. Having said that, you should tailor each personal statement to each law school. Law schools are different, so don't just change the name. Then we do need, obviously, your academic transcripts, mark sheet, whatever you call them, and diploma. we do need them translated. I mean, I can handle French, German, Spanish, maybe Russian, but translation would be nice for the other members on the committee. And evaluated. So we have a list of evaluation agencies that basically take your transcript and convert your degrees into US degrees. Because I know many legal systems or educational systems, but not all of them. And so that's just what we need. In addition to that, we need, we reduced it to 1. So we need 1 letter of recommendation. If you want to send 2 or 3, please go ahead. Ideally from a professor of yours or an employer who is familiar with your performance in class, who can say something about you, how you compare to your peers and what makes you special. And then finally, the most dreaded, yet the most questions about that, the language scores. Yes, we teach in English. It's not everybody's native language. The better your English, the more you take home. This is an investment, not just of time, but of money too. So you really want to do well. So you, as you heard, you will need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. You sit in class with Americans. So you need to understand what they say and you need to be able to speak. Does it have to be flawless? No, absolutely not. You hear me, even after 30 years. So it just means that you should be pretty good. So we are stricter in terms of the TOEFL requirements than some other schools, more lenient than, again, others. So the overall TOEFL score should be 95 with minimum subscores of 25 in reading and writing. We figured you will pick up listening and speaking skills when you're here. For the IELTS, it's 7 with even subscores. There's Duolingo. I prefer those two. We also, because not everybody has the opportunity to study English in their home country, we offer conditional admission. That means you can enroll in a language course that's designed specifically for my law students at our language center at Loyola. It's often taught online because students don't need to spend an additional semester than in the country, but you can also come here on a visa to study the language, to bring up your language skills. And many of my students choose that route, even if they meet those requirements. Often they do a writing course just to be up to snuff. So that's it. Easy, right? I know you will have questions, and that's what we are there for. Send us an email, communicate often and early, and we'll help you to get through this. So you start the application form by filling out the form under this link, and don't forget to submit it. And that's how you create your file. You can then upload documents, and that's it. All right, my least favorite slide. Actually, I changed. I like it because comparatively speaking, we are not that expensive. There are law schools that charge much more tuition. We are a private institution, so the overall tuition for the degree is 42,000 something. Whether you finish it in 3 semesters or 2 or in 4, it's charged by credit hour, and that's what gives you the flexibility. If you enroll in 8 credit hours in the fall semester, that's what you pay for in that semester. If you do 14 then in the spring, then the tuition bill will be higher, but it makes it more feasible than paying a flat fee, for example. You can, of course, use an installment plan that breaks down what you have to pay in monthly installments. And then really most of my students, almost all, get a scholarship, and that would be in form of a tuition reduction. So often I get the question, how much will it be? And I cannot tell you that because that's a decision that the admissions committee makes once your file is complete. So the best way to find out is to complete your file. And then you will find out about the scholarship. Yes, you do need to pay for living expenses as well, and that's part of your visa process. There's an official estimated amount for living expenses, and that includes books, insurance, incidentals, public transport pass, by the way, and housing, etc. So that's for Chicago around $20,000. You don't need all that much. If you keep your own insurance, you can waive out of our insurance, the mandatory insurance, and that's about $3,500. You don't need to spend that much on housing and don't go out that much. So I have many students who have relatives in town because Chicago is so multi-culti. There are people from all countries in Chicago, big communities. So they live as relatives. Sometimes they live in the suburbs. We have excellent public transportation, so it's no problem to get to school. So that's the slide that you want to, everybody wants to know about those facts. We, yes, help you with the visa process. We have an international office. That's what they do. I'll just send you over. They are the experts. It begins after you have been admitted and after you accepted that. Before that, we will not obviously help you with your visa. They will guide you through the process. It may take a lot of time depending on where you live. Some of the US consulates and embassies are understaffed. The wait times are long, particularly in Nigeria, Kenya, India, Pakistan. So do leave enough time for the visa process should you not be able to make it. It's easy to defer your admission to the next semester. So it's a little frustrating, but you don't have to wait for a whole year then to enroll later. You do need to show that you have that you can finance yourself for 1 year. That includes the tuition, minus the tuition reduction and the living expenses. So do plan ahead, look out for scholarships. Maybe you have a very rich aunt or uncle, or maybe your employer will help you finance. Maybe you have savings, maybe you can take a loan. That's what the Americans do, by the way. For them, that is an investment. They get a loan to pay for college and law school. And then they are getting a job that actually will help them pay back the loans. Postgraduate options. You can convert your visa, your student visa, into an OPT, optional practical training visa, which means you can stay in the United States for 1 year and work in the legal field. Doesn't have to be a law firm. It can be in a law library, but it gives you an opportunity to experience law firms and companies and courts. And that's just a continuation of your education. Or you can transition to the JD or the SJD program. That, of course, extends your student visa as well. And that ends my fact-based presentation. I know that Chicago, most people are not really aware of what Chicago really is about. There are lots of rumors and they're all true, but you need to know more than just Al Capone slaughterhouses and Oprah Obama and the Bulls and maybe wind. So that's why I put together this slideshow with nice photos to bring home to you how really fantastic Chicago is. I told you, I've lived here for 30 years. The city has improved continuously in those 30 years. And this will show you how it actually looks in Chicago. So this is the law school on the right side. On the left is the dorm. Achieng and Josh, do you live in the dorm? No. So that kind of, so it is an option. It's very convenient, particularly in winter if you just have to walk across. Of course, those students are always the ones that are late. But most of our students find a place, a room, a shared flat in Chicago in one of the many neighborhoods. So Josh, where do you live, for example?
I live very close, but not in the dorms. So I live like a block or so away from the law school. Excellent.
And Ching, how about you?
I live a little bit further out, 30 minutes from the law school in Rogers Park.
That's where many of my students live. Rogers Park is on the north side. So you will see photos of the lake. The general rule is the closer to the center and the closer to the lake you are, the more expensive the apartments. The neighborhood of the law school is called Gold Coast. And we have a beach 5 minutes away from the law school. It's still beach weather, by the way, end of September. If you're a little hardened, the water of Lake Michigan is cold, but you get used to it. So this is the Gold Coast. Our law school is just around the corner. This is Michigan Avenue, the major shopping mile in Chicago, shopping area. It's that's the River Chicago and the River Walk with restaurants. You can walk for miles along the river and in the downtown center. That's 10 minutes away. That's my students. Couple of years ago, I take my students every year on an architecture cruise through the river and the skyscrapers and then out on the lake. It's actually what I'm going to do tomorrow. So Josh and Aching, Aching, you're joining anyway. Josh, if you want to come, let's go. So this is one of the river and the water are a major component of Chicago. And then, of course, look at those skyscrapers. They were invented in Chicago after it completely burned down in 1871. And we have skyscrapers of any generation, and the really big architects build in Chicago. And usually there are 50 new buildings being built at any time. So when I take this cruise, every year there are new buildings to admire. That's the bean, the symbol of Chicago. That's in Millennium Park, just down, if you walk for 20 minutes down the Michigan Avenue. I'll have other photos of Millennium Park. This is where we host 3 outdoors of all kinds of jazz, blues, anything classical, etc. That's another view. There's lots of green spaces in Chicago, lots of parks. Olmsted designed the parks for Chicago. And the law school is to the right of that big black building. Sports, so it's not what I can talk much about, but I think we do have 2 baseball teams, ice hockey, soccer, right? Basketball, and so on and so on. So if you're into sports, you can go and spend your time in those stadiums. And yes, we have winter, and guess what? It's fun. I have to say that. It's you can skate. I love skating. So this is on Michigan Avenue. That's really cool, but there are lots of skating rinks throughout the city. Can't skate on the lake. But that's one way to spend the winter, unless you go into bars and restaurants and museums and so on and so on. This is Lollapalooza, originated in Chicago. It's a multi-million visitor, gigantic music festival with numerous stages throughout downtown. Happens end of July, and it's gigantic. And then finally, yes, the Obama summit. I told you there's more than Al Capone and opera. And of course, the music scene, Chance the Rapper. We have amazing music in Chicago. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra and the Lyric Opera for Classic, lots of contemporary classic music, jazz, blues, and anything else that you may be interested in. That's the final slide, my information, and that's how graduation looks like. We go to the main campus of the university, which is not downtown, but near Rogers Park, right on the lake. And yes, that's the ultimate goal. Thank you so much for listening, and I believe that Gareth will pepper me with questions now.
No doubt. Thank you, Insa. Great insight into not only the law school but Chicago there as a whole, because a lot of us would have heard of Chicago, a lot of us will know where it is, but to find out the more finer details of the city, where you can live, the affordability, what it's all about is great. So thank you for all your input there. I really appreciate that. Let me start with Ching and Josh. I'll start with Ching in particular. I found what you were saying about the specialisms in, I think you mentioned Kenya. It was just one curriculum and that was it. And then you came to Chicago and almost had a catalogue, which was beyond your wildest dreams, which is great. You can pick and choose. How important was that? And was that a big factor? Was that the main driving factor for you leaving your studies at home and coming to, in particular, Chicago?
Yeah, so it was very different for me. I think this is how American education or American college works, where you basically have a catalog and you'd now pick and choose and design kind of your semester to what you would want, of course taking into account the required courses you have to do. So I actually didn't know about this until when I had already gotten my admission, and so it was very exciting for me to kind of work through the course catalog, and then they give you a bit of a grace period once the semester starts, so you have a week, you can attend the class and see if you like it or not. And so I went through kind of a bit of, no, this is not what I had in mind, so let me do something else, and ended up with the roster that I have now. And yeah, it was kind of a good, a happy surprise for me, like, oh, this is really nice. I can pick and choose what I want to do. I don't have to do a topic or a class that I really don't want to do, which in Kenya, you don't have that choice. It doesn't matter if you like property or not, you're going to be in a property class. So yeah, I think that was a good addition to the class and the courses.
Fantastic. Yeah. And Josh, you come from obviously down under, all the way from Australia. Why Chicago? What made you choose that law school in particular? And was it preset in your mind that you wanted to go there and therefore made it very easy, or was there something at Loyola that made it stand out and therefore you apply and enroll?
Yeah, so kind of funny story. My father-in-law did the JD at Loyola as well. So I did have some personal ties to the law school before I started. But the other thing that drew me was the LLM program. Like there's a lot of information about, INSA and all the good things that the program offers online. So when I read up and attended sessions like this, I thought Loyola is the place for me. And I also knew that there was that opportunity to transfer into the JD program, which was really appealing for me because, as Incha mentioned, like I want to stay in Illinois long term. So I wanted to have that option of going into the JD program and being able to sit for the bar in Chicago.
Superb, thank you. Insa as well, you touched upon it in your presentation already about how great Chicago is in terms of the rivers, the skyscrapers, the lifestyle and everything else that goes with it. Surprisingly, the beaches and the sunny weather for the end of September, which really took me by surprise. But talk to me about the opportunities for students when they're studying at the law school, about internships, externships, and potential opportunities for when they've graduated as well, because that's key, isn't it?
Right. So yeah, let's just start with Josh. He in his first semester enrolled, we have a business law clinic. So we have 6 clinical programs. A clinical program is a mini law firm in the law school. So the professors are attorneys, they work on real cases, and the students will work with them on those cases. They can go to court with the professors under supervision, of course. And Josh started that in his first semester in the business law clinic. Many of my students do that. That's one of the clinics they like. We also have a tax law clinic. We had a We have students in the tax law clinic. We had one student from Brazil who joined the child law clinic. So she went to court on behalf of children to fight for their rights in schools, for example. So those are those are some of the options to get professional experience. It's a great mix because you do not just do the work, but you're guided by the professor, and there's a class where you discuss the issues that come up with other students and the professor. With a student visa, the students are not allowed to work outside of campus during their first year of law school. That's one of the reasons why many of my students extend to 3 semesters, because in the 3rd semester, they can go out and find a job part-time in law firms or companies or public interest companies. They can enroll in the clinic. That's part of their credits. So you get credits for the work you do in the clinic. So that's one of the options. We do, through the alumni presentations that we have, and in the law school, the students get an idea and start connections. And also through the many faculty we have who are practitioners. So that's part of the networking that we offer.
Excellent. And in terms of, I mean, we got an Australian and we got a Kenyan on with us today, but in terms of the different nationalities and different cultures within the law school, is that diverse? Is there a huge amount of different nationalities because of the different types of LLM that you offer?
Well, my LLM program, the other LLM programs are not so much for the international students. We have an LLM in tax law, right, which is very specialized. But what my students do, they enroll in the international law LLM and then do the certificate in tax law. So it's a very strong program. In terms of international, you know, our school has a lot of diversity within America. So we have a lot of first-generation students, for example, who for the first time in their family go to law school. We have different, you know, it's a lot of diversity in terms of from different states, sort of the age range with the weekend program and so on and so on. We have some international students, but not too many. So really the international aspect comes from my students, and I appreciate that because I want my students to soak up the American way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier there's no application deadline, which is brilliant because it just takes the pressure off. When are the actual intakes though? Because obviously you've got application, no application deadline. When can they expect to start?
Yes, so the program in January begins in mid-January, typically after MLK Day. In August, it begins in the 2nd or 3rd week of August. So there is not really a deadline from our side. I have admitted students just the day before school starts. Mostly those live in Chicago already. The real deadline is the visa process. Right. So you need enough time to go through the application and the interview and then the issuance of the visa. So that's why you should aim at submitting your application or completing your application a half a year before the program starts. There are many law schools that have a deadline of December 1st or November 1st for the next fall. That's not what we do. That's the benefit of enrolling admissions. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. And just finally as well, I just want to talk about the English language requirement, because there will be some people, and we always encourage people to speak as much English as you can, because not only is it the main power language in the world, but it will help you with your master's degree. For those that it's not up to scratch and they don't have the information, or they don't have things in front of them to help them get up to scratch, if you like, do you have courses or anything in place that can guide them to the right level?
Right. Yes, that's what we do with the conditional admission. So we do need some test. and maybe students have taken the TOEFL test, and I understand it's expensive. So in some situations, say most of the application documents are in, I would refer those students to the director of our language program at Loyola, and he created a TOEFL-like test. That is free. Shouldn't promote that, but that's what it is. And the TOEFL test gives you a general idea, but what he does gives me a much better idea. I work with him a lot. And then he did create the English program for my students. So they're only law students, only LLM students in that course. And it's almost one-on-one again, because everybody is on a different level or has different grammatical issues.
Yeah.
So that's very neat. I do recommend, I mean, there's so much online now compared to 30 years ago. I had to join a book club to get English books. So there is a lot out there. I once you have a certain level, I recommend that you start reading the US newspapers. You can get 10 articles for free at the New York Times. Most new newspapers let you read some articles. You can read about law. The law is such a major topic. I mean, just open the newspaper today. Yeah. It's just full of it. And this is an excellent way to get an idea of the legal system. It's written for non-lawyers, so that makes it much more understandable. You learn the terminology already in context. It doesn't help to just study vocabulary. You need to read about it in context and get familiar with it. There are many, at the New York Times, you have 2 reporters who write exclusively about the Supreme Court. That's fantastic. And really go through those articles word by word. And
just finally, and so we'll wrap up on this, I think it's important to touch upon this. We're seeing a change ever so slightly at LLM study in terms of the age of student and what we would call students being mature. We've seen more and more mature students applying for LLMs, and when I say mature, we're talking 30 plus these days, which is nothing. So are you seeing that change ever so slightly? Are you seeing slightly older generation, a slightly older type of person still enrolling for an LLM?
So I'd say it really depends on the country. There is a lot of migration or immigration or lots of refugees. We have quite a number of refugees or asylum seekers in our program. They are experienced. They are in the United States because they had to leave their countries, and now they need to move on. So that's always been a strong focus of our program. But yes. I mean, you have many countries in South America where more and more people immigrate or try to get a foothold in the United States. So that is a factor. It also matches our profile because of the weekend JD, which has more mature or experienced people with experience under their belt, lawyers. So that's why my students also navigate toward that section. And then my program is 12 years old, so within the last decade, give or take, we have a mix.
Excellent.
Yes.
Inter, Ching and Josh, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you all. And thank you for giving up your time as well to share your thoughts on Chicago, the program, and everything that you guys have to offer within Chicago. So thank you. We look forward to hopefully catching up with you in 2024, perhaps with some different students. Hopefully you guys have moved on and you've graduated, and good luck with the rest of your studies. And thank you for joining. But for now, a huge thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again for the next session with Brooklyn Law later today. Thank you. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there, reach out for more information. Happy to help. Thank you very much. Okay. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.